The city that never sleeps, New York, is currently restless because of an overwhelming number of empty apartments. Austin, sometimes referred to as the Silicon Hills, is now merely a collection of windswept hills with abandoned buildings. In 2025, the United States is witnessing an unprecedented event. More renters are leaving major cities now than at any other point in the century. Rental prices dropped by double digits. Apartments remain vacant as a result of the landlords' panic. These sites, which were once the nation's commercial hub, are now museums of a time long since past. But the reasoning is scarier than the figures. Americans no longer want to pay for a life that is no longer worth living. Is America's middle class quietly moving out of cities that aren't worth the cost? In addition to examining how metropolitan havens can quickly turn into financial disasters, today's film will list the 10 fastest, deadliest American cities. Let's get started. 14%. That represents a one-year drop in the average rental cost in Austin. Doesn't it sound good? But what if an apartment block that once had a waiting list longer than the queue of people buying the newest iPhone started handing out discount flyers like a pizza joint that has no customers? The only sound emanating from the once crowded rooftop pool is the wind howling across the water. The Silicon Hills, Texas's pride, are slowly becoming peaceful hills. The tech bubble burst. Formerly powerful businesses are simultaneously laying off workers, from multi-billion-dollar startups to IT giants. When the six-figure engineers disappeared, the rental industry also lost its most profitable customers. Austin built houses for an extinct class. Consequently, several high-end apartments are currently unoccupied. The landlord, who was once a king with unbridled pricing power, is now enticing tenants with gifts: free concert tickets, free parking, and 3 months free rent. It was previously unthinkable in this place for some to even reduce the deposit to $0. Many of the units are still vacant, though. The market was so hot at one point that rental prices increased by over 40% in just 3 years. But now, it's as cold as a Texas winter. Construction projects that were planned when funding was cheap are now becoming increasingly burdensome as loan rates rise. The value created by the flat is less than what the investor has to pay. Furthermore, the luxury flat class for tech workers is gradually being abandoned by the tech industry itself. The story is not just about economics, it also has to do with society. Overly high rental costs have long resulted in the departure of regular employees. As prices begin to decline, they have yet to return. Perhaps they relocated to a more livable area. Additionally, they may no longer believe that a simpler future is possible here. Perhaps Austin's most significant lesson is this one. When the wealthy go out, you will feel very alone because a whole city was built for them. But is this a temporary decline? Or does it mean that the tech city model has reached its zenith? And Austin is just getting started. The allure of the tropical paradise is no longer enough to hide the harsh reality of a city that is bursting at the seams when one considers a more luxurious version of Miami. Let's go there together to continue this journey. If Austin is the story of the tech bubble burst, Miami is the tragedy of an opulent dream crushed by reality. Like many tragedies, it began with a brilliant aura. During the pandemic, Miami turned into a playground for the newly wealthy, as rental prices increased by over 60% in just 2 years. However, the festivities come to an end in 2025, and when the lights go out, there's nothing left but the bill. Rental costs have decreased by 11% in a single year, but it was because there were too many vacant apartments, not because the landlord was being kind. The once thriving financial center of Bickle is now as full of billboards as rent signs. Luxury condos in Miami Beach, which were once as sought after as Super Bowl tickets, are now attracting renters with free parking, gift cards, no security deposits, and buy one get one free offers. So what happened to paradise? It was not a lack of demand that caused the market to crash, but rather excessive costs. In recent years, Florida's property insurance has quadrupled due to the increased risk of hurricanes and floods. The cost of condominiums has also increased as a result of new safety regulations implemented after the fatal building collapses. A lot of landlords discover that their insurance premiums are higher than their rental income. They lose money each month while they wait for a miracle. Meanwhile, Airbnb, which was once a goldmine for small investors, has become a burden as travel has slowed down. Landlords switched to long-term rentals in an attempt to cut losses, which caused the supply to soar. In addition, foreign investors who used to be the mainstay of the Miami real estate market are leaving the market due to concerns about uncontrollable fees and the potential for natural disasters. How does it turn out? Apartments that were once worth $900,000 are now only worth $700,000. Even worse, no one wants to buy them. Moreover, when its customer base runs out, the luxury market collapses faster than a Category 5 hurricane. Miami was a pipe dream once. Warm sunshine, a blue sea, money, and opportunities. But now that dream is collapsing under the weight of costs, greed, and nature. Therefore, if even paradise is too expensive to exist, what city is truly worth living in? Is America about to become a place where no one can afford to live where they've always wanted to? Finding a middle ground was once exemplified by Atlanta, the archetypal American city. It isn't as vibrant as San Francisco, as expensive as New York, or as glamorous as Miami. A lot of people think this city is ideal. Steady work, affordable housing, and respectable middle-class living standards. But in 2025, that balance changed, and now it is disintegrating in a way that no one wants. Over 50,000 more units were built in 2021-2024 alone. This is a significant amount for a city that is known for having a balanced supply and demand. The problem is that the bridge is no longer there. Then what happened? It's not because Atlanta lost jobs, rather it's because renters lost their financial vitality. Living expenses have not increased in tandem with wages. Inflation erodes all savings. Additionally, during the epidemic deferment period, when student loan payments resumed, millions of young people began recalculating the equation. Instead of paying $2,000 a month for a flat, they might return to live with their parents or with friends. The result was a wide wave of clustering. To save money, Gen Z and millennials in Atlanta are either sharing rooms or leaving the city. Atlanta's growth was once fueled by a wave of immigration from wealthy states, but it is now slowing down or even reversing. And a market that was designed to manage the flow of people is at a loss for what to do when the masses leave. This imbalance is also present in counties that were once family havens, such as Cobb or Gwinnett. No one is using the rental house. No one is interested in finding out. Small investors sharply lowered prices to avoid losses. Some people completely abandon their plans to buy new homes because they don't want to become landlords with no tenants. In order to start over somewhere else, people are now moving out of the city where they once lived. Since even balanced cities are unbalanced, is there a truly sustainable paradigm? Our next destination, Las Vegas, is a remarkable example of making large real estate investments and losing everything in a matter of years. So keep that question in mind. Las Vegas used to be the ideal location for people who left California in quest of a better future and a less costly way of life. There were thousands of people in the city. Speculators scrambled to buy apartments as Airbnb properties popped up like mushrooms, believing that Vegas always wins. By 2025, however, the wheel had stopped turning, and the result was a dreadfully losing bet. The average rental price has dropped by more than 10% in just 2 years, but the number of vacant apartments has doubled. Henderson and Summerlin's once crowded apartment complexes are now so empty that you can hear the air conditioners from the apartment next door. The property, which Twain once rented for $400 a month, is now only $190, and no one is renting it. There are other problems besides the excessive price. There is a huge discrepancy between expectations and reality. The tourism sector in Vegas has not yet fully recovered to its pre-pandemic levels. Tips are not as freely given as they used to be, conventions are shrinking, and casino patrons are spending less. When the core economy weakens, there is less demand for rental properties. Airbnb was the final straw. As tourism-related revenue declined, thousands of homeowners switched to long-term rentals to offset their losses. The supply significantly increased in a matter of months, resulting in lower labor costs. In addition, several completed construction projects that were started when things were going well are now worthless chips on the gambling table. Many investors, especially those who made their investments during the 2021-2022 boom, want to sell their apartments for less than what they paid for them in order to pay off their loans. Others choose to lose money each month in the hope that the market will recover. But as any seasoned gambler knows, the house always wins unless you are the house. In this case, the house has also declared bankruptcy. There's a saying among Vegas investors that goes, "They spread frequently." The biggest winner in a casino is the one who departs at the right moment. The problem is that very few people give up when they're winning. Las Vegas, the city of lights and opportunity, is currently paying a heavy price for its errors. Wagering on endless development is the easiest way to lose everything. Is this just a losing hand, in your opinion, or should we fold right now? If Las Vegas, which is inherently risky, collapses, what will happen to the areas that were once known as America's promised land? Phoenix is a clear example of that. In the years following the outbreak, Phoenix was the US's bright spot. People from expensive California and bustling New York are relocating here. The land of endless possibilities, vast open spaces, and sunny bliss. Real estate developers began building as if millions more would arrive the following day when the number of migrants skyrocketed. In just 1 year, over 30,000 new units have emerged. The problem is that no one arrived. Phoenix rental prices have dropped by over 12% in the last 12 months, a figure that seems advantageous to renters but is a nightmare for financiers. Complexes that used to have waiting lines are suddenly advertising 2 months of free rent, like a supermarket sale. In the US rental market, utilities were once considered a luxury, but now some landlords are even willing to cover them. What happened to this dream that continued to expand? The answer is in 2 words: economic information. Migration is slowing down, remote work is declining, and offices are gradually reopening. Arizona is seeing a decline in new residents. The business isn't expanding anymore. High loan rates have consistently delayed investments in starting new businesses or offices. There is a halt in the labor market. There are fewer new jobs created when there are fewer new hires. Tens of thousands of newly built apartments are therefore waiting for buyers, much like desert stores. The city, which was originally intended to house 10 million people, may now only have 8 million residents. In addition, renters continue to face a high cost of living, while homeowners are burdened with massive debt. Many people today owe more than the value of their apartments. An obvious contradiction. Phoenix's rental costs are still too high for a comfortable standard of living, despite recent drops. Perhaps Phoenix has forgotten an old truth. Every expanding dream has limits. It is possible to expand buildings, residential areas, and highways, but it is not possible to add new tenants. Is Phoenix merely a victim of a fleeting fad? Or does this point to the boundaries of American urbanization? Because if this expansion dream doesn't work out, what will happen to Dallas? A city was believed to be an unstoppable growth machine until it broke its own gears. For a decade, the American real estate market was dominated by Dallas, but 2025 showed the opposite. Rental prices dropped by 10% in Frisco, Plano, and Uptown. Flat vacancy rates also hit their highest level in 10 years. A number of bad decisions are to blame, even though it seems like a typical market adjustment. In the midst of the growth frenzy, developers rush to build tens of thousands of luxurious apartments. They believe there will always be enough people willing to pay more in the glittering glass skyscrapers. But as inflation soared and living costs put a strain on incomes, the middle class, which had previously occupied those units, began to depart. Meanwhile, owning a home in Dallas is no longer as cheap as it used to be. The insurance amount increased significantly. Property taxes are very expensive. Additionally, homeowners' profits are decreased each month by mortgage interest rates. Many private investors are losing money every month, despite the fact that their apartments are rented out. The irony is that Dallas has an abundance of housing. Affordable housing is the only thing it lacks. Expensive bows are widely available, but cheap bows are difficult to find. Furthermore, when the market only benefits the richest 10%, 90% of people relocate. Dallas was shocked to see that there weren't as many millionaires as regular people after building the city for them, according to one tenant. Then, High-end buildings with marble lobbies are now obliged to give away free parking, gift cards, and even a month's rent to fill vacancies. The fact that many IT and financial companies, which were once growth engines, are now also laying off workers is further weakening the rental market. Dallas's story raises a difficult question. Is this a sustainable growth paradigm or a bubble fueled by ambition? And who is not affected if the real estate capital fails? Because the answer might lie in the northern city of Boise, Idaho. The city, which was once a haven from the bustle of the city, is currently going through a decline that few predicted. Dallas was a story about a growth machine shooting itself in the foot, while Boise is a lighter, but no less bitter version of a lovely fantasy that vanishes like smoke the moment it hits reality. By 2025, the urban exodus frenzy will fade. These days, working remotely is uncommon. Temporary inhabitants are starting to move to places with more opportunities. Furthermore, after creating an entire development model focused on foreigners, Boise was suddenly abandoned. The average rental price has decreased by over 13% in a single year. Once fully booked for days, apartments in the city centre are now empty for months at a time. The investor doesn't understand. They used to think, build it, and they will come. But they didn't. In reality, because no one is willing to make further investments, many projects are being shelved in the middle. Because they do not make as much as California tech workers, teachers, nurses, service workers, and other members of the local working class have long been marginalized in the market. After their departure, the entire class of wealthy immigrants is now leaving. The city fell suddenly into emptiness. A $2,000 flat used to attract dozens of applicants. Now, it must be reduced to $1,500 and include 2 months free. However, no one is calling. Even the local economy is being impacted by the shock. Coffee shops, restaurants, and boutiques. Companies that once benefited from newcomers are either cutting back on their hours of operation or closing completely. Once known for being peaceful and livable, the city is currently struggling to retain its own residents. Perhaps the best illustration of a reality that many towns refuse to accept is Boise. The idea of fleeing the madness of the city will only remain a reality as long as people still believe in it. As the surge in deurbanization fades, there are fewer reasons to stay. So what happens when people want to start over and paradise isn't enough to keep them from doing so? The answer is most likely in the Northwest, where Seattle, which was once the epicenter of opportunity and technology, is currently experiencing an even larger wave of departures. Instead of a shattered hope, the cause this time is the failure of an entire ecosystem. For over a decade, Seattle has served as a symbol of modern-day America. People used to say, if you want to live close to the future, move to Seattle. But in 2025, that future is shifting. The average rental price in the city has dropped by over 10%. Additionally, after having year-long waiting lists, premium residences are now offering incentives never seen before. You will receive 2 months free, cash upon signing, and gift cards in exchange for agreeing to rent. The glass towers, now silent concrete blocks, look down at the empty streets as if recalling their glory days. So what destroyed a city that seemed to be impregnable? The answer is quite simple. There is no longer any leverage. A wave of layoffs from software companies, Microsoft and Amazon, has decimated high-income renters. The same group that was once willing to pay $3,500 for a studio apartment. Because of the shift in employment paradigms, many people have realized that they don't have to live in an area that is occupied for 300 days a year just to type on a keyboard. Suddenly, being a technological city was subordinated to quality of life. Slowly but surely, the crowd began to thin out. Not every family leaving Seattle is just signing a lease. They are also taking away consumer spending, stability, and even hope for the city's future. Newly built, high-rise buildings are now incomplete and sitting in the rain. Some are frozen indefinitely, while others are abandoned because there are no renters to cover the outrageous costs. Ironically, despite cloud computing's continued growth, the infrastructure supporting it is vacant. Technology still helps investors, but it can't stop locals from moving. Seattle, a city that was once irreplaceable, is now confronted with a difficult dilemma. Is its tech reputation sufficient to keep people there when technology has rendered their presence unnecessary? Furthermore, if the tech capital is able to lose the very leverage that made it successful, take a look at San Francisco, where the collapse is impacting not just jobs or rent, but an entire innovation fantasy that is collapsing from the ground up. For many years, San Francisco has been more than just a city. The concept has been developed by entrepreneurs. But in 2025, that dream came crashing down, leaving only the harsh reality. Paradise might lose customers. The average rental price in the city has dropped by as much as 15%. Apartments that used to rent for $4,000 are still available for $3,000 if they are not occupied. There is no longer an exemption for signing a lease. They are now a feature of the landscape. The once thriving financial industry now resembles a post-storm alleyway. Shops are closing, offices are empty, and restaurants with lengthy wait times are now making room for rent signs. Why? Not one. Nowadays, working from home is more common than uncommon. When you can work from anywhere, why spend a fortune to live somewhere that experiences rain, traffic, and instability? Concerns about safety, homelessness, and quality of life have caused many families to leave because they feel they have no other choice. Not because they want to, but because they think they have no other choice. Most importantly, there is less trust in the city. Many believe that San Francisco is not the city of the future, but merely a holdover from its glorious past. The implications are far-reaching and extend well beyond the real estate sector. Local businesses are closing, and iconic restaurants are disappearing. Even the city's independent theaters and art galleries, which are its cultural lifeblood, could not survive when the crowds left. The tech industry, which was once a mainstay of the economy, is now widely dispersed. Austin, Denver, and Salt Lake City are now attracting the talent that San Francisco once possessed. Perhaps more frightening than the fact that San Francisco is changing is the possibility that it will never be the same again. But if the symbol of innovation fails, what will happen to the empire that seems to be unstoppable? The answer is waiting at the end of the list, and for the first time in generations, New York City, the city that never sleeps, is yawning wide. For many years, New York has been more than just a city. It's a state of mind. If you can succeed here, you can succeed anywhere. And that's what millions of people believe. To pay $4,000 for a flat that isn't as large as a warehouse in order to live in the middle of the world. But by 2025, the world had changed, and the center had been abandoned. The average rent has decreased by nearly 12% in Manhattan, and even more in Brooklyn and Queens. What was deemed impossible has now materialized. For the first time in decades, renters are in charge. Landlords are now offering deals that would have seemed ridiculous only a few years ago. Cash for signing a lease, free monthly rent, and even furniture upgrades are examples of incentives. The explanation is simple to understand. The economy is evolving. Employees are being laid off by the media, technology, and financial sectors, which collectively sustain the New York rental market. Along with the expensive homes the city used to boast about, thousands of people are escaping Wall Street, Madison Avenue, and Silicon Alley. But the external blow was the most devastating. International investors withdrew their funds. For many years, they were the unseen backbone of the market, buying apartments to hold as investments or even to leave vacant. But high taxes and global unrest are forcing them to look elsewhere. And when the flow of foreign exchange stopped, the system began to suffocate. However, because they used to consider living in Manhattan a privilege, the younger generation is posing a difficult question. Why live in a small flat that is only 30 square meters when I could get a house in Charlotte or Nashville for the same price? Then they left. Not because I hate New York, but because it's no longer worth the expense. And this is arguably the most significant question that America is currently confronting. If even New York, the epitome of the American dream, can become weary, what city is strong enough to face the harsh realities of the new era? Enjoying this deep dive into the US tourism crisis? Give it a like to support the channel, and subscribe for more smart, no-fluff insights into travel, policy, and what's really driving the headlines. If this made you think twice about cross-border travel, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell, we unpack the stories others just skim. Curious about where tourism, economics, and real life collide? Like this video and subscribe for daily content that goes beyond the surface.